Hello and welcome to Panzer Corps 2. The game has finally been released and it's time to start making some new videos. And I'll start by making a small series of intro videos where I'll show you the various aspects of the game and a little bit of the gameplay mechanics, and then we'll start looking at some scenario. We'll do a run through the entire campaign, I think. That should be fun. So this is the start menu. You can see a number of buttons. The editor takes you to the scenario editor. It's based on the scenario editor for Panzer Corps 1, but it has a lot more functionality. So you can look at that one in a separate video, I think. Multiplayer is either hot seat, that should be self-explanatory, or you could do the PBM++ or the online. The online is where you do true online, where you sit online with another person and play through the game. PBM is asynchronous, so you can just do a turn and then the turn passes over to your opponent that can finish his turn whenever. Load game is of course load games, that's very interesting. Other, here you can see the legal information. We'll start with that. Okay, not so exciting. Credits, I think lots of skilled people sinking a lot of hours into this game, so I hope it will be a success. So we'll observe half a minute of silence for these brave guys, and maybe there is a little surprise at the bottom here. And wait for it, I promise it will be great. And you can look at the smiling Stuka up to the right here while you wait. Oh, there is Björn Blomsøya. That's me. And I guess that's because I have helped with beta testing, like helped quite a bit. And it's been a really fun process. I think I've sunk like 300 hours of testing and of course feedback and so forth. And the developers have been very interesting in hearing what we, the beta testers, have to say. So, okay, this one takes you to the forum. This one takes you to the in-game manual, which is actually kind of good, I think. If you press it, it opens immediately. It's not a extremely detailed manual. It doesn't sort of dive into the deep underlying mechanics. It explains them in sufficient detail to give new and returning players an idea how things work, both old and new. I think they've struck a good balance there. Yes, the forums you can visit. There is also a Discord server for Panzer Corps 2, probably geared towards multiplayer, which is our next button here. You also have options where you can set your settings. I could run it at maximum, but then sometimes my GPU fans start up and I don't want that, so I can just run it on high. I don't see any difference anyway. I don't have a 4K monitor, so there is no difference for me between high and maximum really. Audio, I have tuned down the music so you won't hear that too much. It's running in the background, but not very loudly. So I would normally play with a little more music. The music is pretty good. Hotkeys, you can configure them as you want, up to 3 configurations for each key. Here you have some options, scrolling speed, and this one is probably interesting. I play with 60% of the hex grid strength. It normally starts off so you don't actually see the hex borders. I'm an old wargamer, so I like my hex borders. So 50-60 is a good balance. This just toggles how dark the focal floor is. Here you can actually turn off the strength plates of units, but I don't understand why you would want to do that. Some weather effects like rain or snow. And how big the strength plates are. I think just the default value is the best. If you check these two, Dead soldiers, dead infantry remain on the map, and wrecks remain on the map until you park a unit in that text and it's cleared. I think it just clutters up the battlefield for me, so I play with those off. Here you can make the unit appear bigger, so they take up more space in the hex. Makes them easier to see, so it's not so stupid, but I like to have them fairly small. Animation speed is how fast they move, how fast they finish their animation. 10 is not so. I like seeing them move, but I don't want to play at 0 because that takes too long. And there's a strategic map that if you remove this, then the units look like they do in the tactical map. Sun height, sun position, I haven't experimented with those. Here you can turn off moving clouds. And this might be of interest, you can actually remove the city and place name. Sometimes they get in the way, but I like having it on. So these are my setting. I have 60 on hex borders, I have turned off wrecks and dead soldiers, I have city names on. Languages, there's support for other languages, German, Russian, Spanish, others. Okay. So now we have covered these basic other buttons, other editor, multiplayer, and load, and of course it's new game that's the really interesting part. And for me the campaign is the most interesting aspect, but there is also a set of tutorials where you can have a tutorial campaign, 6 scenarios that explain how to play this. You have links to a number of short YouTube videos that explain key features, and you have some tactical puzzles of varying difficulty, and you have a sort of larger tactical challenge. It's a tactical puzzle, only it's a little bit bigger. The scenario button has a number of historical and a couple of fictional. This one is set around Berlin 1945, but it plays out rather not in a historical manner, but it's huge, and it has a lot of interesting scripting. This is a huge entirely fictional scenario, and here you can play as Russians. The campaign is German only for the time being. That will change when DLC is hit, of course, but for the time being these are the only 2 scenarios you can play as the Soviets. Here you can play Allied, Americans and British forces, just Americans, and 2 pretty cool scenarios with the Germans actually. This one, lots of airborne troops, invasion of Crete, and the entire invasion of Poland on one huge map with 150 auxiliary slots and 150 core slots. If you want to play a single scenario, this one is definitely my favorite. Awesome, you should try it. You also have a new feature in Panzer Corps 2, which is random scenario. I'm not going to go so deeply into that, but you can configure map sizes. This is an inland continent, you can be on the coast. They have several mission types, a number of players, so and you can get mileage as the allies too. But the developers have said they have already in the game the possibility to create linked campaigns of random scenarios, so that is something we might see in the future, but for the time being scenarios are one-off. Okay, so now we get to the campaign. The campaign has 5 entry points and multiple branchings. So if you select Poland here, it's not just Poland, you are presented immediately with the choice of North and South Poland. And that is a path you follow for 2 scenarios until you get to Norway, where you can choose between North and South of Norway. And after Norway you can choose going through the Ardennes, or you can choose going through Belgium. So the war is going on elsewhere, but you have options, and the campaign 3 branches, so you can, there's 61 scenarios total, but there are many ways of playing through this, so the replayability value is much larger than in previous games in the series Panzer Corps 1 and the Panzer General series. And of course the entry points here, at Barbarossa, you just skip the first 2 years. I think the vast majority of people will start here, but it's good to have other entry points. So here you are immediately presented with 3 choices: North, Center, or South Army groups. While North Africa is just the Africa Corps, so there is no more choice there. And then you can start in 43, and you can either play a massive battle at Kursk as the first scenario. You start here with your entire force, and there's a huge auxiliary force up here, and then you try to crush the Soviets. Or you can start trying to defend Sicily from the Allied landings there. And most of the scenarios are in the campaign are historical in nature, but there are a few branches that take a historical path. For example, when you get to North Africa, you can actually win at Al Alamein and keep moving, taking Egypt, the Suez Canal, the Middle East, and eventually ending up in Moscow in 1943. And after there, you can go to the invasion of the UK in Great Britain in 1943, and eventually even conquer the USFA. But the majority of scenarios are historical in nature. So let's start with Poland here, and you can see that depending on the path, you can either get between 20 or 23 scenarios. So that's a lot. If you take some of these others, you have fewer scenarios, of course, because much of the scenarios in the start are skipped. So always start at the beginning. Well, that's up to you. You have 5 default difficulty levels. You start at Colonel. You can go to Major. Then you have more time to complete your missions. All the missions are timed. And you get more prestige, and you get free elite replacement between missions. So that's very easy. Colonel is just Colonel. General just cuts your prestige, your money budget by 30%. So if you feel you have too much prestige, it's too easy for you, you can up it to General. But it's not that difficult, you just have a little less money to spend. So you have to be a little more careful, but it's not difficult. So I think this is a good starting place for returning gamers, but that's just me. Field Marshal is where it starts to get a bit harder, 60% less prestige, so you get 40% of your normal budget. That starts to sting, and you have to be careful. And the enemy has 10% extra accuracy. Base accuracy for units is 50, so now the AI has 60. That's a little more than you get from having one experience star. An experience star gives 8% extra accuracy, or a maximum bonus of 40 for a 5-star unit. So the AI is a little more likely to hit, and therefore also a little bit more likely to actually attack you, because the odds of success are better. And this means you will take slightly more damage in a scenario, and then you will have to take more replacements, and replacements cost more prestige. And especially if you have to take those replacements during a scenario, they cost even more. So not only does this cut your prestige budget by a good chunk, more than half, but you must also expect to take more damage, so you will spend more of your remaining prestige on replacements. And Generalissimus, of course, pushes this one step further, from 60 to 80% prestige. Wow. So you only get 20% of the normal. So on Colonel you have earned 10,000 prestige, but on Generalissimus you have earned only 2,000, and the difference here is starting to be very big. And of course now the base accuracy of the enemy is raised from 50 to 70. So they will be attacking you a lot more and doing more damage. So you will definitely be taking more casualties, you need replacements, and you may be forced to do in-scenario replacements for extra cost. So this is quite a bit tougher than normal. Perhaps so much so that I would say that Field Marshal is my preferred level of play. I think it's a good balance for me because it forces me to not spend prestige on everything, and also makes the AI a little bit more willing to attack and harder to overcome. So let's look at advanced options. Yes, the first is combat randomness, which is set to 50 of between 0 and 100. And this is a bit hard to explain, but I will try. The game will give you a prediction on every combat based on your stats and the enemy's stats. And this is a sort of perfect prediction based on those stats. So if you put the slider here, the outcome of the battle will always be what is predicted. So this is more chess-like. If you set it to 100%, the random number generator kicks in and could give you the predicted result, or a worse result, or a better result of varying degrees. If you put it at 50 or any place in between, it rolls the dice, it uses the random number generator to produce the result, and then it averages that result out with the predicted result. So if you predicted to do 4 damage to the enemy and the random number generator says you actually do 6 damage, then if you have randomness at 50, then it will take 4 plus 6, 10, and divide it by 2, or 50% of 8, so of 10, so you get 5 actually. So if you were at 0, you would do 4, because no matter what the random number generator said, you would always get the predicted result. If I had it at 100, you would do those 6 damage that the random number generator indicated, and at 50 it's the middle ground, and the further you get up here, the more the random number generator has to say. And here it doesn't have a lot to say, but there is some influence. So I think I've always played with this at 50. So Panzer Corps 2 has a very powerful undo mode. You can basically undo anything that you do, attacks, movement, whatever, all the way to the back to the start of the current turn. And of course the game's autosave function saves at the start and end of every turn. So that means you have full control of everything and shouldn't really have to worry about manual saves, and you should definitely not have to save scrum. You just have to undo if you sort of want to try out a different approach, or you're not happy with the combat results. Of course, some people think this is cheating, and for them you can just disable it. You can set it to movement only, and you can also limit it to a number of uses per mission or per turn. I think it can be useful to, at the very least, have movement only, and maybe 2 or 3 per turn, so that when you inevitably misclick something and move it, then it doesn't penalize you so much for that. Or you could just keep as is and decide not to use it unless you do something really strange, or misclick or something. Undo is automatically disabled in the new Iron Man mode, and you should be familiar with what Iron Man is. You get 1 save, and that's it. And the game keeps saving whatever you do, so there is no going back, no undo, no nothing. And this of course increases the difficulty, so if I were to play the entire campaign at Iron Man, I will probably do it at a slightly lower difficulty. I think I could make it through in Field Marshal, but I would be more comfortable doing Iron Man in general. So the rest here, you can turn off weather, and you can turn off supply rules, but I wouldn't recommend turning off either. You can turn off the fog of war, then you see everything, which is just lame, so I wouldn't recommend it, but you can do it. I mean, maybe you want to play the campaign without Fog of War because you don't think Fog of War is cool at all. It's up to you. Shroud means you can actually see the entire world, the terrain, through the Fog of War. You just can't see enemy units. Turning on Shroud means you can't see beyond the visible part where your units have spotting, so everything just becomes blacked out, and you have no idea if there's mountains or rivers or whatever behind that. It's more suitable for an exploration style game, and maybe for random multiplayer scenarios, but not for the actual campaign. Here is a feature that many are looking for. I'm not sure many is the right word, maybe some. Some people just don't like the turn limit and would love to turn it off. Well, good news, you can just do that, so no, there is no turn limit. Custom army. Normally, at the start of a campaign, you don't get the deployment phase in the first scenario. You just have to start with the forces allotted to you. All other scenarios later have a deployment phase where you can move heroes and upgrade and whatever. And by checking this, I would recommend it. You can customize your starting force as much as you want. I used to do that. Here you can turn off heroes. Why would you want to turn off heroes? Heroes are super powerful, some of them. And that's exactly the reason. You don't want to play the game with super powered heroes, so you do this. Awards are like medals awarded to specific units. They are not as powerful as heroes, so I think they can safely be left on in, I don't know, all circumstances really, but you can't take it away if you don't want to. Iron Man we already talked about, and we have 3 challenges, the Guderian, the Manstein, and the Rommel difficulties. So basically you have 5 turns less if you use this. This one gives every enemy unit plus 5 strength, so all their tanks and whatever are 15, all their infantry strength 20 or more. So and they can always strength on top of that, of course, so that this one is heavy duty. I would not want to do this on the Manstein setting. I would play this. The difficulty level on this is about the same as this. This is a little harsher in terms of combat capabilities of the enemy. This one has plus 20% accuracy. This one has plus 5 strength. But of course, later in the game, these enemy units also have experience stars, so they will start hitting really, really hard. And what Generalissimus and Field Marshal doesn't do, they doesn't give the enemy more strength points. So David versus Goliath or Manstein does that. So it takes a lot longer to kill a 15 strength Sherman Firefly than a 10 strength Sherman Firefly. Or a swarm of 15 strength T-34s are a lot more dangerous than a swarm of 10 strength, even with that accuracy bonus. But of course here you have full prestige. So maybe I could do General and David versus Goliath. That is, I think, possible to play through the campaign. It's probably possible these others also, but it will be very, very hard. And hard usually means very slow and maybe loading, and I don't want that. This one is pretty cool. You don't get any prestige per turn, you just get prestige from capturing enemy equipment or capturing flags. Flags are important hexes that are scattered across the map. So I'm pretty sure you get a lot less prestige using this one than you do here, but there is no bonus to the enemy's accuracy or anything. I've just barely tried this one and it works, but there are a couple of general traits that you can take that make it less painful. You can look at those later. I haven't really talked about the commander customization and the trait points. That's a new feature. We'll look at it in the next video. But the default is 2, but you can switch from 0 to 10 points, and it's entirely up to you. It's your game, whatever you think is fun. If you want to pretend you're commander is super skilled and has all these strengths, then you can just boost it to 4 or 6 or 10 or whatever you want. Or you can push it down to 0. If you click this one, there will be no customization whatever. So if you take 2 or 10 points here, it doesn't matter. The customization screen won't pop up open. And this is also important because potentially a campaign could reward the commander with additional points. The current score campaign doesn't do that, but it's an option that can be added later or modded in. So you could theoretically do this, and then you get the customization screen, and you can take negative traits to give you some positive, but this just kills it altogether. We will have customization, and we will have 10 points, I think. We will have Heroes Awards, no Iron Man, and no special challenge, not this time. So, time to move on. Okay, so this is the first branch of the campaign. You have the choice between Poland North and Poland South. Poland North is of course up in this area, and Poland South is down here. Whatever you pick here, Poland North then leads to a place called Bug River or whatever, and Poland South leads on to Warsaw. So there is a 2 scenario path that you have to follow depending on what you pick here. There are also some hints of what awaits. Whichever choice you take, when you get to the end of those 2 scenarios, you will be presented with a choice in Norway of either attacking the Oslo and area and the southern Norway, or going to what's called Norway North, which is actually the middle of Norway where I happen to live. So we'll pick Poland North and hit accept.